Now, today I'll be taking you guys through how to authenticate your users using Google sign-in, and this will be a video from scratch, so I'm assuming you've never tried Google sign-in before, right? And you are new to authentication using Firebase. So the first thing we'll be doing is we would have to set up a Firebase project and then connect our Flutter project to it. So that we go to the Google sign-in part. Over here in my code, I just have a login page, and what I want to do is I want to allow users to access the home page only after they've authenticated with Google sign-in, right? So the login page just has this UI, less than 50 lines of code, and it just has this continue with Google button here, and that's what we want to use for the authentication. So the first thing for us to do is to go to our console, so Firebase console. So just search on Google Firebase console, or you can just type console.firebase.google.com. And here we need to create a new Firebase project. So come up with a project name, maybe your app's name, so food, let's just call it food, and then we continue. I don't need Google Analytics for this project, so let's just continue and create our project. So we can continue to our dashboard. And the first thing we want to do here is to enable authentication for this project. So under the build section, we can come to authentication and then get started with authentication. Right, so in this authentication page, we need to enable Google sign-in. So the Google sign-in, you just tap on that and then enable it. And you need to also configure your support email, so just the email you are using for Firebase, right? And then you save this. Right, so we've enabled Google sign-in, and now we need to connect this Firebase project to our Flutter project. And one easy way we can do that is with the FlutterFire CLI. So if you've not set up the FlutterFire CLI, I have a video on that, but in this particular tutorial, I'll be going through the setup all over again. So just open a new tab and search for FlutterFire like this, and you can tap on this first link or just any of the second link. Any of them will do. So if you tap on the first link, you'll be informed that this page is archived, so you just have to tap on the second link. This will take you to the documentation for FlutterFire setup, right? So just scroll down, scroll up instead, and we need to run this two commands. So we first have to have the Firebase CLI installed, then we log in with Firebase, and then we install the FlutterFire CLI, right? So installing the Firebase CLI is really simple. You just follow this command, so click on this, and we have installation methods for Windows, Mac OS, and then Linux. So we have standalone, binary, we have npm, and I'll recommend the npm approach because it's much simpler. So in order to use the npm approach, you need to have Node.js installed, but then it's very simple. So install Node.js here, and I already have Node.js installed, so I'm not going to go over this again, but all you have to do is come to a Node.js page and download the version for your operating system and install it. After you've installed this, you open your terminal and then you run npm install-g firebase tools. So this is going to install the Firebase CLI, right? And you then continue to log in with the CLI, right? I've installed Node.js and I've installed Firebase tools. Also note that you do this just once. So if you already set up FlutterFire CLI, you don't need to set up all this again each time you want to authenticate users using Google sign-in or connect your project with Firebase, right? It's just a one-time something. So I've already run this command. And the next thing is to log in and test the CLI, right? So in order to log in, you open your terminal and then you type Firebase login, right? So this will open up a web page where you can choose the account you want to log in into Firebase. currently I'm logged in as this email, right? And that's the account I've used to create the Firebase project. So just the account you use to create the Firebase project, choose that one when you are logging in with the Firebase CLI. That should be it for the Firebase CLI. And now back to the FlutterFire CLI. So we need to run Firebase login, which I suppose you have done, and we need to now activate the FlutterFire CLI. So you copy this command here, and remember you do all this just once, right? So you didn't have to do it the next time when you are connecting your project to Firebase. So open the terminal, and I'm going to paste this command. So that's pub global activate FlutterFire CLI, right? I'm going to leave a link to these resources, and then this is going to install the latest version of FlutterFire CLI. If it's the first time, you're going to get a warning to add the FlutterFire CLI to your path, right? So you just copy that, the instruction will be given, you just copy that and then you paste it there. Because I've already installed this FlutterFire CLI, I'm not going to get any warning for this, and then we can continue from there. We can close this. And now what we need to do is to connect our Firebase project to our Flutter app. So you open your Firebase project, then you open the terminal. And within the terminal, you type FlutterFire configure. Now if you get the error FlutterFire is not found or FlutterFire is not recognized, any error preventing you from running FlutterFire configure, I think a simple Google search should give you the solution. It's not that difficult coming up with a solution, right? So FlutterFire configure, and this will fetch all your available Firebase projects for the currently logged in Firebase user, right? And we have our project over here, which is food. So you just choose the project you want to connect to this Flutter project. So the Firebase project you want to connect to the Flutter project. I'm going to choose this food. So I have to select the platforms I'm supporting. So I'm supporting Android and iOS. So my app runs on both Android and iOS. And then you hit enter. Now this will ask you if you want to add some files to your build.gradle. Just say yes, and that'll be it. So you've successfully connected this Flutter project to your Firebase project. Now there are some instructions over here. So we need to add Firebase options to our main.dat, and we are going to do that later, right? So back in the Firebase console, if we come to the project overview, we should have two apps here. So let's refresh and see. Right, so realize we have two apps over here. That's different from the food name we gave to the Firebase project. The actual Flutter project is called Google Earth. That's why you see Google Earth here, and then you see food here, right? So let's go to our project settings. In order to implement Google sign-in on Android, we need to provide some SHA certificate fingerprints. So all that we have to do is to just hover over this help icon and then tap on this see this page link over here. This should give us more details about how to go about the SHA certificate. So we need to self-sign our application and scroll down until you find to get the debug certificate fingerprint. Copy and paste this, right? So you choose the one for your OS. So I'm going to choose Mac/Linux, and then copy this thing. So copy this command over here. Now open your terminal and then paste this command, right? It's going to ask you for a key store password, and the password is Android. So ANDROID, and then you hit enter, and this is going to generate some keys for you, right? So back to the Firebase project, you add fingerprint, and then you copy the keys generated. So the keys are going to be two. We have SHA1 and then SHA256. Copy the SHA1 and then paste it, and it's automatically going to identify which key you pasted, and then you save. After that, add another fingerprint, and then you copy the second one, and make sure you copy everything like this, and then you paste it here. And so we have to make sure we copy everything exactly without white spaces. So I'm going to enlarge this window a bit and then copy everything. Right, so the second time it works, and I'm going to save this. So that's for Android Google sign-in, right? And we are going to work on the Android before we work on the iOS. So we don't need to download this Google services.json file because FlutterFire normally takes care of that for us. So back in the code, when we check the Android app directory, we should see the Google services.json file over here. So we don't need to download and then come and put it here again, right? Now we have an error in our code, so Firebase _options is showing an error because it's trying to import Firebase core. So let's add that package. In our pubspec.yaml under dependencies, let's add the Firebase core dependency. Let's add Firebase auth. So that's what is going to allow us to authenticate with Firebase. And then we need Google sign-in, right? So the Google sign-in makes it easy to authenticate using the Firebase auth when it comes to Google sign-in. So Google sign-in, and then make sure you are adding the latest version of these packages. Right now, after adding them, you can run flutter pub get, and then this will download these packages. Right, so we can see that the error disappears. In our main.dat file, we need to change this main function to an asynchronous function, and then we need to write something called widget flutter binding dot ensure initialized. So we need this line here first before we can do anything related to Firebase, right? And now after this, we need to initialize Firebase. So this a process you have to go through. You're always going to do this for any Firebase related project. So await Firebase dot initialize app, and then we have to pass in some options. So the options is default Firebase options dot current platform, and where this default Firebase options dot current platform is coming from is from this Firebase options file. So we have this Firebase options file that was created by the FlutterFire CLI, and that's what we are using. So that was what was showing the error previously. So we pass in this await Firebase dot initialize app, and now we need to quit our app and run it again. Okay, so we get this error here, right? And in order to fix this error, what we are going to do is we have to go to our Android and then look for build.gradle. So build.gradle, not the one within the app, but then the build.gradle just within the Android folder. And we need to come to where we have start FlutterFire configuration and FlutterFire configuration, and change this Google services to 4.3.15 instead of 10, right? So after that, we can run our app. Good. And we still have another error again. This time around, the error is related to Multidesk support. So in order to fix this Multidesk support, what we have to do is to go to Android app and then build.gradle, and this time around we are in Android and then the app directory and then the build.gradle file, which is different from the build.gradle file we changed the version from, right? So over here we have to scroll down and look for where we have default config, right? Then look specifically for Min SDK version, and change this Min SDK version to 21, right, and then save. So after this, everything should work. Good. Now I intentionally left those errors in so that when you encounter them, you know how to fix them, right? So we can close this. We are left with implementing the actual Google sign-in, right? So what we have to do is, let's first come to our login page and then find a place where we can create the sign-in function, right? So I'm not going to create a function over here. Instead, so I'm going to create a new directory called controllers, and then within it I'm going to create a file called user controller.dat. And you should know that you shouldn't follow my approach. This is a file we create our sign-in function in. That's all that you'll be doing here. So if you're using the clean architecture approach, you can just go straight with that and then create your login logic in your repositories. So I'm going to create a class called user controller, and this class will have the method for signing in with Google. So let's first have future, and we are going to return the user. So user, that's the user who signed in, and then we are going to call login with Google, right? So this is going to be the name of our function, login with Google, like this. And we need to return something, so if we save without anything, it's going to automatically return now for us. So we are first going to create a variable called Google account, and that is going to be Google sign-in dot sign-in, right? So this Google sign-in dot sign-in is coming from our Google sign-in package we added. So if you go to your prospect.yaml file, you should have the Google sign-in package there, and we need to await this. So await, right? So this is going to give us a Google account, so Google sign-in account. Now after we've gotten the Google sign-in account, we need some other information from this Google sign-in account. So I'm going to create another variable, final, and then call it Google Auth, and this is going to be Google account dot authentication, right? So this authentication is going to give us some information we need to actually sign in with Firebase, right? So in order to sign in, connect the Google sign in with Firebase, we need to get this authentication from the Google account, right? So if we look at the type, this is Google sign in authentication, and the actual thing we want to achieve is signing in with, so signing in with Firebase Auth, right? And signing with Firebase Auth, we need to provide credentials from our Google Auth, right, which is the Google account authentication. I'm going to create a variable called credentials, or credential, and that's going to be Google Auth provider dot credential, right? And if you don't have to worry much about this, this is just the procedure necessary to sign in a user using Google, right? So Google Auth provider dot credential, and then we pass in Google Auth dot access token, which is the variable we had over here, and then ID token, which is also Google Auth dot ID token. And you don't have to memorize this. Each time I want to do this, if I don't remember, I just look it up. So it's just something you can have somewhere and always reference. So we have this credential, and now we can finally sign in the user with Firebase, right? So that we can see the user signed in on our Firebase console. So we are going to do await Firebase auth.instance dot sign in with credential, and then we pass in our credential. So all this while, what we actually wanted to do was this Firebase auth dot sign in with credential. So if you look at Firebase auth, we have a lot of sign in methods: sign in anonymously, sign in with email, sign in with phone number, and a lot of other sign in methods, right? But the one we are looking for is sign in with credentials. And then this sign in with credentials, we need to pass in a credential which the Google Auth provider is giving to us, right? So the Google Auth provider provides us with a credential coming from our Google account, and now this function has to return the user, and this user is coming from our Firebase Auth. So if you look at the user, a user account, which is the user that signed in, and we need to return our user credential.user, and this is optional, so everything is right, so it's an optional user, right? And this is all that we need in order to log in with Google. So we need to call this method, and I'm going to make it static so that we can call it without instantiating this user controller class. So we don't have any try catch here, and we're going to handle that in our UI because I want to pass in any build context and then navigate here as well. So within the login page, in this onPress, I'm going to convert this function into asynchronous function and then wrap it with a try catch. So this is where I'm going to have my error handling, and you can also create another function at the top here under the build, but I'm going to just do it here because it's not much code. So I'm going to create a try catch, and then our user is going to come from our user controller dot login with Google, right? And if we have a user, then it means the authentication was successful. So if user is not equal to null, and we need to await this, so await. And if user is not equal to null, then it means we had some user, so we want to navigate to our home page. So we can do navigator dot off context dot push, and we need to push replacement. The reason is if we sign in a new user, we don't want the user to be able to navigate back to the authentication page. I'm going to import the home page like this, and we have this lengthen rule over here, so don't use build context across async gaps. So in order to fix that, we need to add another check, which is and mounted, right? And this mounted can only be accessed in a stateful widget, so you have to make sure you're in a stateful widget, and that is going to remove the lengthen rule. So if any error happens, we first want to catch Firebase auth exceptions. So on Firebase auth exception catch, so when an error happens which is of type Firebase exception, then we can catch that one. First print the error message. We need my catch over here, so error.message, and then we need to also show this error message in a snack bar. So I'm going to do scaffold messenger.off context, and then my snack bar is going to have my error.message or something went wrong. So if there is no message on this error, then I'm just going to input something went wrong, right? Now what if the error is not Firebase auth exception? Then we need to catch a general error over here, and then we can print this error, and then we can also show the same snack bar, which we are converting the whole error to a string, right? So this is how our authentication will be. We first call our user controller.login with Google. If we have a user, we navigate to the home page, and then we make sure we replace that page. Else, if we have Firebase auth exception, we print the error message, then we show a snack bar with the error message. If we have any other form of error, we print the error, then we show a snack bar with the error message. So this is going to be our setup for the Google signing. Now let's try our Google signing for the first time and see what we will get. So continue with Google, and for now we don't have any loading indicator, so we wouldn't know if we tap on the button, but this works immediately and it is asking us to log in. So we have to sign in with our email and password. So I'm going to type in my email here. As well as my password. So this is a basic setup for a user on a new device. And you see that we are immediately navigated to the home page and we can't go back because the authentication was successful, right? So that's for Android. And let's have a way of accessing the currently logged in user so that when the user first opens the app, we don't take them back to the login screen, right? So within the user controller, I'm going to create a static variable, and then it's going to be called user, right? And that is going to be our Firebase auth.instance.current user. So this is always going to give us the currently logged in user, right? And whilst we are here, let's implement our logout function. So I'm going to create another function called sign out, and this is going to call Firebase auth.instance.signout. So we first sign out from Firebase, and then we also make sure we sign out from the Google package as well. So Google signin.signout, right? So this is what we need for sign out. And then back in our main.dat, in the home, we are going to perform a ternary here. So if we have a user, then we don't need to go to a login page. We have to go straight to the home page, else we have to go to a login page. So if user controller dot user is not equal to now, which means we have a user who is currently logged in, then we want to go to the home page, else we want to go to the login page, right? So this is going to be the simple logic. And now when we hot restart, this should take us to the home page if everything works. So I'm performing a hot restart, and as we can see, we are still on the home page. Now on the home page, we can greet the currently logged in user. So I'm going to convert this center to a column, with some children, and then we first need to display, I'm first going to display the image of the currently logged in user. So I'm going to use circle avatar, and the foreground image. So our foreground is supposed to be in a network image, and then the URL is going to be our user controller .user.photo URL. But this does not accept now, so we first have to have a now check over here and return an empty string. Also, we need to move the cons from here. When we save, we have the image over here, just that it is at the top. I'm going to center everything in this column. So and I'm going to wrap this in a center widget. So let's also show the name of the currently logged in user. So just after this circle avatar, I want to have a text that will display our user controller user.displayname, and we have to always make a null check for this because our user can be null, right? So there could be a chance that we don't have any user, and it shows the name here. And let's finally add a button to log out. So we can add an elevated button, and the child is going to be a text that says log out, and within the onPress we want to make this an async function as well. Within the onPress we want to await our user controller.signout. So realize that sign out is not static, so let's first make sign out static. And if everything is successful after sign out, we want to navigate to the login screen. So there is no need to listen for an auth state change. We just push the user from that page. So push replacement, and then we want to go to the login page, right? So and we still have our build context error, so we can convert this to a stateful widget and then use our if mounted check. Right, and that is going to fix it for us. So let's try our sign out and see, and we have an error. So let's fix this error first. We need a semicolon here. Now we have a logout button, so let's log out and then see if everything works. So log out. So that's the Google sign-in flow for Android, right? Now let's look at the same flow for iOS, because for iOS there are some few things we have to add. So I'm first going to close the emulator, going to stop this app and run it on my iOS device, so my simulator. So we have our app running on our iOS simulator. If you try to sign in with Google, right, you are going to get an error. So if I tap on continue with Google, this actually crashes the app, and we have Google sign in, your app is missing support for the following URL schemes, blah 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 blah, right? So there is something we have to follow. So let's get back to pub.dev and then look for the Google sign-in package. So under the instructions of the Google sign-in package, we are supposed to add, so under the iOS integration, we are supposed to add this portion of our code to our info.p list, right? So just look for the 8th step and copy everything that is here, and then come back to your editor. So look for info.p list, and you can find that file in your iOS directory. Come to runner. In the runner you should see info.p list. So within this info.p list, we need to add what we copied within the dictionary. So this dict over here, right? So I'm going to paste everything here. And we need to replace this value. So there is a value over here that we need to replace. and we can find this value in our Google service info.p list. So just at the top of the info.p list, there is this Google service info.p list, and we can find our reversed client ID here. So this is what we need to copy to replace the dummy value that was there. Now note that if you don't find your client ID or your reverse client ID in the Google service info.p list, what you have to do is to go back to your project settings, go for your iOS, right, and download the Google service info.p list again, and then replace that one with the existing one. The new one will have the reverse client ID. So let's copy the reverse client ID. Make sure you copy everything. Come to the info.p list and then replace it with the one we copied. Right. And now let's run the app again and then try. So we now have our app running, and let's try to sign in with Google again. So tap on continue with Google, and we now get the Google Auth wants to use google.com to sign in, and we can continue, right? So realize that our Google sign in is now working. And again, I would have to enter my email, as well as my password. So the error we have in the console is related to the image, so I don't think that's a big deal. We can hot restart. Let's hot restart and make sure everything works. So we hot restart, and now everything is working, right? So we have our image, our text, and then our button to log out. And let's try the logout again. And if you hot restart the app, we still remain on the login screen, right? Now that's all for the Google sign-in flow. What you mostly do when you are signing users is to save the user credentials to Firebase, right? So you want to keep a record of the user in your database, and we'll be looking at how to do that in another video. This video is mainly for authenticating users with Firebase, right, and Google sign-in. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.